writers, I'm very excited to chat to Seyi Onabanjo today. He's joining me all the way from New York, and let's hear what he has to say about his writing.
Thank you, Mia. It's really nice to be with you, and I appreciate this chance to to give my story this way. Glad to answer any questions you have, so please go ahead.
Cool stuff. Okay, so my first question is just quite simply, tell us a little bit about who you are. Tell us about your writing. What does your average writing day look like? I'm sure there's been lots of upheaval with your big move now, but yeah, so what are your plans and how do you get the words on the page and who inspires you? So tell us a little bit.
The first part of the question, my name is Seyi Onabanjo, as you mentioned. I'm an engineer. I'm originally from Nigeria. I had the great good fortune to live and work in a lot of Africa through my career as an engineer. And I just finished my second stint working living in Johannesburg, South Africa, due to my wife's work, actually. I'm married. I've got two absolutely wonderful kids, and we're so glad to be with them now that we're back in New York. My writing, I've always scribbled. I've always written, like almost everybody on the site. I'm pretty sure we all liked to read and scribble things and imagine things when we were kids. And it was always a bit of an escape for me, and created a lot of worlds that way. And I've always enjoyed living in them and seeing how different it is to the real thing. But I never took it seriously. And it was this break in our lives that was forced to us by COVID that made me sit down and see, oh, okay, I could do something a little bit more than just flights of fancy with this. And it was great to actually stumble upon the wonderful community that is 12SS, because you write and you have nobody to share with, mostly, or your friends and your family are tired of saying, oh, it's great, don't stop bothering me. But to get that honest, tough, rigorous, unforgiving, but really loving critique has been made a huge difference to my writing, and I really appreciate that. The way I write now, in Johannesburg, my routine was completely different. I'm trying to figure out a new one here. And I used to write mostly at night in Johannesburg when things were nice and quiet and my mind was still. And I could just put together all the little notes that I scribbled throughout the day into something on the paper. But what I find now does best for me is first thing in the morning, I write something longhand. It might not even have to do with my writing. Sometimes it just primes the pump, so to speak. It could be an idea, it could be just to expand on something. It could be, sometimes one day I wrote, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this about 1,000 times. And that, it helped me. It just almost released all the backlog of whatever it was. Then I do my other stuff, my errands. I have a bit of schedule I do. And from 1 o'clock, I write for my MA class, as I regret I didn't mention, I'm doing the part-time, the MA in creative writing at VIDS. I'm doing it long distance right now until classes come face to face. I write for that, and then later on, I write for short story submissions. I write for 12SS. I write for any projects, and then there's certain days of the week I do for my technical work. Then I don't do much freehand writing, much literary writing at all. Short answer, I try and get myself started in the morning. I have time blocked off just before lunch, and then one in the evening, and then in the night, sometimes I wake up and I come and scribble something down. But that kickoff in the morning, if I don't do that, I find I don't have a good day.
Well, it's a very good habit to get into. All the big writing greats always say first thing in the morning. So it's great if you can do that. Awesome. Tell me a little bit about your book, Under the Thumb, if I'm correct, the anthology that you are part of. What happened with that?
Well, yes, actually, that was a wonderful surprise, because Rock and the Hard Press is a press I really like. They write, you can almost describe them as subversive. They're very small, but a lot of their anthologies are very impactful. They do a lot of writing towards social justice. And when they put out the call for this, I had actually submitted stories to them a couple of times, and they gave me very nice, really supportive responses, pointing out why my submission wasn't quite good for them, but to keep on submitting. And so I was glad when I submitted the piece, which actually came to life due to 12SS. We're not their type. And their theme was on police brutality. And I'd had the misfortune of running afoul of the police in a couple of places, once in my native Nigeria. And this was a bit of a collection of experiences between myself and a lot of friends. I kind of put everything together. I let my imagination flow, and I sprinkled it with a lot of what I thought was the the driving reason behind the obvious bad guys in that piece. So when they reached out to me and thought, oh, this piece might, submit something, I put that in. And the funny thing was I had just landed in South Africa when they sent the message to me that, oh, great, we're going to consider this. And I completely missed the message. It went, I went into my junk mail. I didn't look at it. I missed it for about 2 weeks. And they actually sent a reminder. And of course, I freaked out. How could I miss that? Okay, so but I think I was back in Johannesburg then to pack up our things to come here. So I managed to buy some time with them, and I found an evening when I could knock it into shape and send it back, and then worked it on the flight coming back. And then when I got here again, they reached out to me again, and we fixed it up.
Wonderful.
And then it came, and it's that the particular anthology that is edited by an author called Seyi Onabanjo, someone I respect and like really much. He's an absolutely fantastic writer, no holds barred, really exciting, wonderful lyricist. So I was really glad to be published in that piece, and I'm hoping that I can get published with them as well.
That's wonderful. Yeah, it looks like a very strong anthology, and I just read some of the reviews and stuff. It looks fantastic. So congratulations.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, very, very well done. Tell me a bit, this is sometimes a weird question, but it always reminds me, I think it was a Dorothy Parker quote. It says, I hate writing, but I love having written. Do you enjoy writing? Do you enjoy the process of writing? Does it energize you, or how do you find the experience?
I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. It's so sometimes I'm writing and I'm laughing. I'm typing and I'm smiling. And my son who actually works in publishing gave me a really good habit. He says, whenever you see anything that sparks your mind, write it down, which I used to do before, not religiously. So he said, put it in your phone. Your phone's always with you. You don't always have a piece of paper with you. So I've got a little note, I put it in, and I'm laughing. I'm wondering, okay, I'm going to give this trait to this character, or I'm going to do this to this, I'm going to do that to that. And when I sit down and when I feel that there's a sentence or a paragraph or a scene or a person who has come through really well, it makes me laugh out loud to myself. And my wife is used to just watching me saying, oh, you're talking to yourself again. I said, no. So I'm
talking to other people. They're in the screen.
Exactly. And they're talking back. Can't you hear? So it's absolutely fun. I really enjoy it. And it's I understand Ms. Parker's feelings, though, because there are sometimes when that blank page, I can't remember who it was that said about how writing is looking at a blank page and I think maybe Mark Twain, I may be wrong, until a blank page until dark spots of blood drip out of your forehead. Those moments of frustration, which I'm not alien to at all. Sometimes it can be very painful. Yeah. But we're lucky where we live. We're absolutely lucky. I can't imagine anybody taking a walk to downtown Johannesburg, or going on the subway in New York, or going to the market in Lagos, or going to the shops in Lusaka in Zambia, or going on a ferry in Sierra Leone in Freetown, and not getting absolutely inundated with characters, places, people, situations that you could blow up into a short story or add to a novel or character that you're developing. I think that I absolutely love that the most. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Writers are observers. That's fantastic. Yeah, I was smiling when you're saying you just filled up a page with you can do this, you can do this. I've done that plenty of times before, because then sometimes that's the only thing that comes up, but you know what, eventually it becomes something else. So whatever you need to do to fill that darn page. Tell me, so do you have any other creative pursuits? Is there something else that feeds your writing, or what do you do besides writing to feed your creativity?
Well, I actually I love music. I had a short-lived attempt at learning the trumpet. I think my neighbors everywhere I lived all heaving a sigh of relief at my departing. But I love music, and music does help. Music helps a lot. I love art. I love observing art. I love looking at art. I love analyzing art, and it does make me think. It makes me try and connect with what the artist was trying to do, what was trying to make us understand. I wouldn't say so much I use that to stimulate my writing or to do anything writing, but I use it as a kind of release. And again, lucky in Johannesburg, there's plenty of chances to observe that. New York, there are few better places. There are very few better places, so I'm absolutely inundated with that. So anytime I feel jammed or tired or something else to do, there's a place to go, sit down, chill, look, relax, refresh, and come back suitably energized. So things I do personally, I listen to music. I'm not a very good musician, unfortunately, but I observe and I imbibe as much as I can.
Wonderful. That is fantastic. Tell me a little bit again about the story. You told us a bit about the publishing journey, but yeah, I'm assuming it was a very emotional story to write. I mean, it's a very the subject matter for the anthology is quite heavy. What was the hardest part for you to get down, or just to get started, or to decide what to talk about?
I actually think I wrote that when I first wrote it. I think I wrote it at one go. It was remarkably easy to get out. The difficult part was when I had to, because the very first part of the story where the young man is chasing a convoy and doesn't realize that he's sandwiched in the middle, that actually happened to me. But I managed to escape the convoy because a passing motorcyclist, because just when I was about to get wedged into traffic, a motorcyclist stopped and said, look, you know, the riot police are coming after you because you were in the middle of the convoy. So I was able to take off. But a close buddy of mine, we met for a drink later, and I was telling him my close shave, and it was after a couple of beers that he confessed that he had the absolute opposite, in which he mouthed off to a policeman, and they grabbed him and threw him into a Black Maria and threw a canister of tear gas after him, and he had an absolutely horrendous experience.
Oh.
So in a way, I put in part of his story in it, and the most difficult was when I was reading it out to him. I kind of letting him know I'm going to put this out there, and he was glad at it, because I can now look back at my experience and laugh, but up until when I put it down, I couldn't. And I think, you know, when he read it, we talked about it back and forth, and I think it's helped him just like to get over it. So that's probably the most difficult part, reliving it, not through my eyes, but through somebody who had the worst part of the situation. And then again, imagining the other part, that it could be worse, and if this is really happening in some places to some people right now. But writing it out was surprisingly easy. But later on, when I was trying to get it, clear it, so to speak, with my buddy who it happened to, it was a bit tough.
Sure, yeah. It's heavy stuff at the I think we often underestimate the emotional toll as writers.
It is.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously you wrote a short story. So how did you decide for this particular story what to focus on? How did you choose what to leave out? Which section? How did you choose your parts?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question, because the first time I tried to, because I sprinkle a lot of humor in my writing. I think it helps me to get over the tough bits. And I tried to make it a little bit humorous, and I tried to point out at the Keystone Cops aspect of the policemen involved, and I tried to describe the social situation, the people, the observers, the people just standing around who just didn't bat an eye because, oh, there's a police, let them go. But during the editing process, I understood exactly what Rock and a Hard Place were looking for, and they honed in on the most emotional parts. So I found the parts that I put in there to almost as a salve to help me to get this out quickly without thinking too much about it. It was almost superfluous, and it made it much tighter, much more impactful. So I can't really take credit for that. I think I have to respect the critique that came from 12SS, because that helped me to make it presentable, and then the editing that helped me to hone it on the most important parts. So I think knowing when to use humor, when to concentrate on the most important part, when to use distractions, and when to just let the story go by itself was what I probably learned from that process.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's why we have editors and why we have community, so that we don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me a little bit. Okay, so we spoke a bit about publishing, but I always like to ask writers, what do you consider publishing or literary success?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one, because at the end, at the bottom of it all, a lot of us want to be on everybody's on the bestseller list, but we know that it's a 1 in a zillion shot for pretty much all of us. But I think if I was to walk into a buddy's house and see my name on the spine of a book on his bookshelf, or even, let me put it better, onto a stranger's house, if I was to go, not so much in the airport bookshop, but so someone I could talk to, and they could tell me what they got out of the story, I think I'd die happy. I would be absolutely chuffed by that. I think there's nothing better than that. Be able to connect with somebody through your writing and see the evidence of it there, and not just a pristine copy, a copy that's dog-eared and torn, and maybe, oh, I got this from a friend, he said I must read it. That for me is it.
Oh,
So that's
beautiful
what I'm
image.
looking for.
You just see you sneaking into someone's library, taking selfies in front of their shelf.
Most
um,
definitely.
good stuff. Okay, so let's talk about some lighter stuff. What do you like reading, and what influenced your writing? What did you read as a child? I think that's always where I should start.
Oh no, I read everything. I was yeah, like I'm sure you've heard this from everybody you've interviewed. I loved to read. I was
Mhm.
completely antisocial. I grew up with three very gregarious sisters, one older than me, very outgoing. And we always, the route you go out, and I always had a book, and I was under a table, literally reading and being dragged out by various aunties and uncles, socialized. I just wasn't that kind of a kid. I loved to escape into books. I read, and I have my parents, my aunts, my uncles. I have an aunt who's a librarian, so you can imagine her bookshelf. I was surrounded by relatives who had stacks and stacks and stacks of books. I was introduced to really fantastic writing very early. The book I remember most reading was, I think I was about 6 or 7. I read Jaguanana, which is a book by Cyprian Ekwense, which is completely mature, wrong. I didn't understand it, but I couldn't stop reading it, and I went back to read it again when I was much older. I had a better experience with The Hobbit, which my sister brought home from school, and that completely overtook my life. I still remember the feeling when I finished that story. And now I read fantasy, I read crime, I read thrillers, I love because of my I prefer fiction actually, but I'm part of a book club in Johannesburg called the Well Reds, emphasis on reds, which is RED, because we drink a lot of red wine when we're when we're discussing, if we ever get around to discussing our books. And we mostly read, they mostly read nonfiction. So I'm trying to get them to read more fiction. They're trying to get me to read more nonfiction. So it's working out really well. But I just came across a couple of really nice books. A gent called Manalanga, I forgot the name of his book. It's the Journey of the Soul. It's absolutely fantastic book about
Mhm.
it's placed in that spot just before South African the first independent elections.
Yeah.
It's a story about a boy who had to trace his children coming from Lusaka. He had to go. It's an absolutely stunning book. Of course, C.A. Cosby's Black Talk Wasteland, that completely blew my mind. Robert Muponde's Robert Muponde's Recollections of a Book Louse. I'm sorry,
Okay.
it's too early. I'm just having my coffee, so
sorry, Seyi. I'm dragging you out of bed.
No, it's okay. My fault. Bless you. But the more I write, the more I look for more in the writing. So from Malelanga, I got so much about his pacing. Malelanga writes everything at the same tone of voice. Bullets could be flying, and you could be more to introspection. He writes in the same methodical, detailed, highly descriptive, very emotional way. So it makes you don't want to miss a word. And it's absolutely stunning. Mukwana is the opposite. He's completely all over the place. He throws out, rips up all the rules, sprinkles his writing with Shona words and his turns of phrase are so fantastic. But I'm also reading for the MA as well. So I'm reading a book by Jan Cole Lewis Hyde it's called about mythology, because the book the novel I'm trying to write as my thesis, leans a lot on Yoruba mythology. So I'm trying to get a lot of technical backdrop from that. And of course, I read everything. That's the short version.
Beautiful. Okay, now great stuff. I think you need to give us a list of those books because I like the titles. They sound very intriguing. Okay, and then I have one more question. Well, two more kind of, but I'll put them together and then you can decide how to answer them. First of all, what is next for you? And secondly, what advice would you give to someone who is starting their writing journey?
Oh, okay. Well, we've just moved, so I've always wanted to try and get a bunch of short stories published, and I think I have enough of them to try and tackle right now. But I've had to just pause it because of the unsettled state of my life right now. But I'm about ready to try and do that before the end of this year. So hopefully, I'll have an anthology of short stories out before the end of this year. I'd like to finish the MA by the end of this year and have a product for it, which may or may not be worth publishing, because as you know, the MA makes you produce a thesis, an academic document, which is not necessarily good for commercial publication. But even if that doesn't work, I would love to have done that and have a few more ideas for a historical novel which may work out. So I'm doing some research for that now that we're here. So I really hope to be published in a slightly, more focused scale at the end of this year. That's what I'm the short answer to that. In terms of advice, I fell into it by accident, but I think probably what's done me the most benefit is finding a community.
Mm-hmm.
Because my kids are wonderful and they both love to read and they give me great feedback. And they're not shy about telling me what's wrong with my writing, but sometimes it's good to get an outside voice, somebody who has no connection, somebody you're not worried about them sparing your feelings and telling you the truth about it. And you're able to see their writing as well. Because not just the feedback, but it's seeing the different styles, the way 2 or 3 different people tackle the same theme, the same word prompt, the same genre, but completely different writing. And you look at it and it kind of kickstarts you. Writers, we're all the same. We all beg and borrow and steal from each other. So we're all a microcosm of everybody's writing. So it influences me, and I think it's influenced mine in a good way. Because I have no doubt at all that since I joined 12SS, and I've taken this more seriously, it's my sentence construction. So from short and tighter. My dialogue, I definitely know has improved. And I would encourage anybody who's serious about their writing to try and find a community who can help them to, fix all the bad things and show the good things to copy.
Good. Okay, that sounds like some solid advice to give them, and it sounds like you have a very busy year ahead for someone who's settling into a new country. You're definitely keeping yourself busy.